Welcome, everyone, to Homeless in San Diego. My name is Greg Angel. I am your host, and listeners to the show know that I'm always sharing how special our guests are. Well, today is an extra super special guest, and that is because we are joined by San Diego County District Attorney Summer Stephan. Welcome, Summer.
Thank you. It's great to be with you, Greg.
I'm so honored that you would take the time out of an exceedingly busy schedule to join us. And today, for our listeners and our viewers, they're going to get an opportunity to hear from you about the work that you and your office are doing to help people overcome homelessness. And I guarantee to our listeners that you're going to be surprised at all the leadership that you and your office are bringing to help people. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about new developments related to criminal justice, law enforcement, and homelessness, and some innovative ways that you and your office are helping people here in North County.
It's great. And it's all about the partnerships. And of course, we've been partners with you for a long time. So I'd love to share some of the things we're doing in this space.
Fantastic. Let's start by educating our listeners, and for that matter, myself, the role of district attorney here in San Diego County. What does that entail?
First, I'm honored to serve and I love it. The ability to serve and bring peace and justice and safety to everyone, which is our primary goal as the San Diego DA's office, is amazing. But just to kind of set the stage, it's one of the few positions, being district attorney, that is county-wide. So the district attorney serves all 3.3 million people in San Diego County, all 18 cities, 39 unincorporated areas. So everyone within the county and all the cities is in the jurisdiction of the district attorney. So anytime a crime happens that is especially of a felony level, but even many areas misdemeanors, whether it's a murder, attempt murder, assault, burglary, overdose death, child abuse, human sex trafficking, elder abuse, it's all going to come to the district attorney's office from the variety of police departments. And we have a team of 1,000. That's how we serve the entire county. And this team is consistent of attorneys who are prosecutors. And then there's also victim advocates. That's a big part of our office, is that we're the largest provider of victim advocacy for crime victims in San Diego. And we have investigators, we have paralegals, everything to support the criminal justice system and especially crime victims. I think what people will find is unique about San Diego's DA's office, and maybe humbly, really due to my amazing team, why we've been named the best 5 DA's office in the nation,
Hmm.
is because we changed our mission to focus on ethical prosecution, which is critical to make sure the community is safe. But we also put right in our mission the protection of victims and the prevention of harm. So, under this prevention umbrella and protection umbrella, we saw that we really needed to engage, understand, and partner and assist with the humanitarian crisis that is homelessness. So that's where some of the kind of switching that lens, swimming upstream. So we're not waiting for crimes to come, but to intervene early and make sure there is safety for everyone, which includes our population that's homeless, became more of a priority for me as DA.
Is that unique to your office in here in San Diego County? The level of engagement that your office has in and around homelessness?
It seems to be. I mean, I've read a lot of missions and of different offices, and they haven't quite focused this way. But I think the reason San Diego is one of the lowest, crime rates, the safest, one of the safest county, is because of that focus on both the prosecution, the the law enforcement end,
Hmm.
but also stepping back from it and building systems in partnership with the community we serve that can keep people out of the system, whether it's through juvenile diversion, early intervention, whether it's through making sure that, for example, domestic violence victims that we know are the biggest contributor to women and children becoming homeless, being able to build the systems ahead of time to stabilize those women and children before they end up on the streets. So thinking of the whole picture and trying to intervene ahead, whether it's also looking at another driver of homelessness that might be addiction, looking at ways that treatment and also prevention education programs are available in the community.
One of the things you've helped create is an app that's actually connecting people experiencing homelessness to shelters. We're going to also talk about ways that you're looking to expand that to also help connect people in with the addiction treatment services. We're also going to talk a little bit about the One Safe Place here in North San Diego County and the life changing impacts that's having, bringing together partners in support of victims and survivors. Before we go to those other details, though, I'd love to know, your job is so challenging. I can only imagine. Why do you do what you do?
It doesn't really feel like it's even like a choice.
Mm,
It started, believe it or not, when I was 12 years old. I was reading a National Geographic magazine and I saw an image. And if you read the National Geographic, the images, the photographs really tell the whole story. They pierce you. And at
mm,
12, I saw an image of some girls that looked in an area of North Africa called Sukatra, and I still remember it. Um, they looked like my age, but
mm,
they looked hopeless and full of fear. And, I kind of knew the rest of my life would be about taking away that look of fear and hopelessness from someone. I focused my career growing up in the DA's office for 28 years before becoming the elected DA on building a special victims unit for sex crimes, human trafficking victims. It became, again, a national model for how you prosecute those crimes and protect those victims in a trauma informed way. So it it's it's just it's like a dream life. It has huge challenges, but to kind of think back that I had this dream since I was 12 to help people feel empowered and not feel that terrifying sense of hopelessness
mm,
and fear, and to
mm.
get to actually do that, and now as the DA for the last 7 years on a bigger policy scope
Yeah.
is just a privilege, and it way overwhelms all the feelings of frustration and other things that go along with
Yeah.
elected office.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you touched on, well, it resonates that you touched on hopelessness as an emotion that is so devastatingly widespread in our communities. And when we think about homelessness, when somebody loses their home, and especially once they become unsheltered homeless on the streets of our community, it's that hope is about the first thing that goes, safety and dignity and other things as well. But our teams at Interfaith Community Services work with such a focus on meeting people where they're at to try to identify what can give them hope, because without hope, none of the practical tools of a meal, a shelter, a job, and all these other things that are pathways out of homelessness, none of those are going to stick if somebody doesn't have the hope that resource is actually going to lead to positive change.
You're so right on that. And it really interesting because anecdotally, from dealing with thousands of people in hopeless despair, That's our bread and butter, sadly, every
Yeah.
day. Um, we see people that have lost everything they love, everything they own, and all of that. But there's almost now a science and a measurement that's coming to what hope is.
Hmm.
And what we're finding is that hope is the cure for the
Hmm.
ACEs scores, which are the adverse childhood experiences that often are ones that are leading somebody down the road to addiction, down the road to homelessness, despair. Of course, there's poverty as a big factor in that, but that hope actually is the anecdote for that. You can't remove the bad things that happen to people. They can't take those away, but hope somehow um, brings a cure almost where it can. And but hope has to be real. I tell my team all the time, we're never going to promise something we're not going to do, because that's how you first thing you do, to lose hope, to lose trust. So everything we do has to be based in integrity, in making sure that we tell victims and people who are in despair, here's what we can do. We can't do this for you. We can do this, and we can walk with you on this journey. And I know this is what Interfaith does. That's why this has been a long relationship. And with the app you mentioned, you were, high in the list as the people who helped us design it and also helped us learn what we needed and what would actually work to help people who are invested in helping lift human beings out of homelessness.
So let's talk about the app, because we all know the saying, hope is not a strategy,
Right.
right? But hope is required in order to create transformational change. And
Yes.
that's what's required for people to overcome homelessness. And the app is really a big part of the tactical element of a strategy that can help get more people off the streets and into better situations. So share with our listeners a little bit about the Shelter Ready app, like where it came from and what the intention is, and then I'll share our experiences helping with design and implementation and usage of it.
So it's very, very exciting. So simple, yet really something that is a solution that everybody can use.
Hmm.
And one of the things that we discovered, by listening to experts like you and um, experts in the community, is that there is not an easy way to figure out in San Diego whether there is an appropriate, humane, suitable shelter for the individual on the streets. So that, when you're approaching somebody who might be now ready to accept shelter, to kind of take that leap of faith in you, it might take days waiting to figure out if there is an available shelter. And then even, more difficult is to know whether that shelter is really going to be suitable for your needs, like not putting somebody who's disabled in a top bunk. So yes, that shelter is available, but that's again dangling a promise that we're breaking, right? And we don't want to do that. So we had, as I said, we're the number one provider of victim services. So it's super important for me to always be on the cutting edge of those services. And especially during COVID, we saw that our victims were trapped with their abusers, whether it's the traffickers or the domestic violence abusers. And we needed, when they made that call, to get them sheltered in minutes, not days,
Hmm.
because they were trapped there. And we saw an escalation in homicides and other things. So San Diego worked with a huge nonprofit tech company and came up with a solution that had already been implemented in another state, called the Safe Shelter Collaborative. And we saw that we could picturehotels.com, where instead of calling, 40 different shelters and getting a no, you're able to just enter your request of what you've got, and then up will pop the available suitable hotels. Same concept. So we were able to house our victims in 8 minutes instead of 10 days on an average. with a match of 80%. And the providers with huge hearts told us how much time that left on the table for them to actually serve those people, victims, and be able to help them. So one day, because I don't sleep most days, it popped in my head, could we take that and expand it to homelessness, the wider homelessness? Yes, in that population, you're going to have prime victims, people with trauma, PTSD, child abuse histories. All the better. That's more assurance that it's going to be a fit like the Safe Shelter Collaborative. But we needed to build it using expertise like from you. And we were able to build shelter ready. So it's the more kind of bigger version of Safe Shelter Collaborative. It was beta tested. You can talk a little bit about that. And at the end of the day, on June 9th, we made it available to everyone in San Diego County, both shelter providers and service providers.
It's a real game changer in how our outreach teams are now able to connect unsheltered individuals into shelter. And to build off your hotels.com analogy, for our listeners, imagine if you were trying to book a hotel during a busy weekend where every hotel was booked, because that's the challenge in the world of homelessness and shelters is that there are not enough shelters. Most shelters are operating at full capacity, and then so to find a shelter that has an opening is a challenge. But then, to your point, to find a shelter that has an opening that fits the individual in question is a bigger challenge. I'll share a story because our teams have been utilizing the app both as providers of housing programs as well as outreach teams. One of our housing programs is a transitional housing program for veterans, and it operates out of Oceanside. Traditionally, the way into that program has been a veteran reaches out to us because they're experiencing homelessness. They reach out to the VA, who we partner with for the program. They connect in with us. We do an assessment, and then we bring the veteran in if they're a fit. Um, Alternatively, our outreach teams will connect with veterans on the streets, and if that outreach team knows about our program, they can make that connection. Well, through the Shelter Ready app, um, uh, recently an older veteran approaching his 70s, had been living in his car for more than 6 months, and he had fallen into homelessness because he's having severe memory issues,
Mm.
and he lost his job as a result of those memory issues. His fixed income was not enough to support his living expenses, and this individual who has served our country was now living in his car. Um, he connected with a homeless outreach worker who didn't know about our program, but thanks to the Shelter Ready app, he was able to get connected into our transitional housing program and get placed right into housing almost immediately. It's a potentially life saving connection that doesn't happen if it wasn't for the type of resource that you've helped bring forward.
Boy, that story really tells it all and makes all the expense and effort and time well worth it. I mean, one life like that is the whole story because time is of the essence. When people are desperate and you're trying to help them, being able to use the time economically and be able to efficiently shelter somebody is amazing. The other point you made is the acknowledgement that we don't have enough shelter.
Hmm.
But what we also don't have is the real data as to what is the deficiency, what is the deficit in our shelters, how many shelters are missing, and what type of shelters are missing.
Hmm.
So the other thing that Shelter Ready does is in an objective way, just through the data gathering, it'll feed into a transparent data lake that will
Mm,
tell us here are the three categories of persons that we could not shelter.
mm,
And here's how many people we had to say no to because we didn't have shelter. So, what that will do is it will allow us as a community to build according to the real need, not what we're guessing, and also build with the most efficiency for the dollars that are provided so we can maximize the help to folks out there.
That's brilliant and really important because shelters, as helpful as they are really expensive to operate.
Right.
They require a high level of staffing. They're at a brick and mortar location. They're very difficult to locate. They often run into community opposition wherever a new shelter is proposed. So it's very challenging to create these shelters. So when we're going to put in all the resources that are required to create and operate and sustain them, we need to make sure that they're where they're needed and for the populations that they're most needed for. I think about across the street, we have a 106-bed recuperative care center
Mhm.
for veterans and civilians who have health challenges, both medical challenges as well as behavioral health challenges, and have most often been hospitalized because of those issues, yet are healthy enough to be discharged out of a hospital, but not healthy enough for a traditional shelter. And so our hybrid recuperative care model provides a blend of both medical support, behavioral health support, and housing support. You know, incorporating a function like that into the app that your office has developed will get more people connected to that resource and also identify where those needs are because we know that more of those beds are needed to have the hard data to show with a little bit more specificity how many are needed can really help inform planning.
I think so. I mean, this is exactly like what you created that based on the feedback of the real experience of
Hmm.
seeing what people need. But again, if we can widen that experience and really give you specifics and numbers using the data lake that everyone can share. So the beauty of this is not owned by the DA's office. Yes, I put my investment into it because I have some innovation funds that I thought why not use them in order to benefit the number one issue that we're facing in San Diego, which is this a desperate population of folks on the streets.
Well, thank you for creating the resource. I will say I was skeptical when I first heard you present on this a couple years ago, and I remember I asked. I think it was at one of our local Rotary clubs. I'm like, "Well, we don't have any shelters to begin with; they're all full. So, to what extent is this going to make a difference?" And I was totally wrong because um, it has helped really connect people effectively to the limited openings that there are and all the reasons that we were just discussing. So I just
I
want to name that, like, I was skeptical to begin with, and it's been a real, such an improvement that our outreach teams are so thankful for.
Well, you are the kind of skeptical that we like, which is you're willing to try anything if it's going to help people who need it. So
Absolutely.
you didn't close the door. And in fact, I think the reason it has been successful and we're hearing more of these amazing stories is because it was built by the actual experts, not by the DA's office, because, we're experts at many things, but this is not our expertise. We were there as the convener to be able to bring the experts together to build exactly what they need to get their job done.
The other thing it does is it allows, you mentioned, it frees up time for the outreach workers, rather than spend hours calling shelter after shelter after shelter, they can focus on providing trauma informed care to the person who's there. And also, it can provide direct linkages between the shelters and the individuals who are experiencing homelessness. So there's ability for the app to connect. To not require going through an outreach worker, but connect directly with that individual. So all really, really positive developments.
It's really great. I'm just now trying to hold on and keep it until it fully launches in San Diego. We're already getting calls from other
Oh, I
states,
bet.
other
Yeah.
counties that want to use it, and I love to share good ideas, but I say, I want to see it being used widely here first before we send it off into the whole nation.
Very smart. Very smart. Well, a couple other topics I want to be able to touch on today. Um, the One Safe Place up here in North County. Before we get to that, I want to go to what I think is a more challenging topic, and that is the implementation of Proposition 36,
Yes.
an initiative that was passed pretty overwhelmingly by California voters in 2024. Can you share a little bit about what Prop 36 is, and then we can talk a little bit about. I'd love to hear from your perspective. How implementation is going and what some of the challenges and opportunities are there.
Yeah, so Prop 36 really focused on a few areas, but I think one of the areas that is really most intersectional with homelessness is the habitual drug possession of fentanyl, methamphetamine, mainly the hard drugs. It doesn't deal with the lower level drugs. And the idea that for folks like that, being able to offer two doors, one into treatment and one to jail, might incentivize folks to accept treatment. And this part of Prop 36, Prop 30 passed by 68% in every county in California. And part of the premise of that concept came from the fact that what we saw is that our homeless population on the streets, per the medical examiner, so very independent data, is dying from overdoses at 130 times higher rate than our housed population. So this tells you that homelessness has intersectionality with poverty, trauma, child abuse and everything else, domestic violence, but it also has an intersection with addiction. And what we saw in our courts is that we had a thriving drug court that ended up being only half full because the past citations, misdemeanors were not really incentivizing folks to accept treatment. And it seems a little bit harsh to say that, you're going to kind of force treatment. It feels that way. But from my perspective, with 35 years of talking to people, families, talking to recovered um, addicts, going to graduations from drug court, what I see is that it actually is more compassionate to be clear and to provide clear choices that may allow somebody to save their life. And this is and we're already seeing the benefit of that. I'd love to come back when we've had a year because that's when you get much better data.
Yeah.
But we're seeing our drug courts full again. We're seeing the county step up in a big way and provide for an individualized assessment for each person that is charged with this treatment mandated felony, it's called.
Hmm.
And if they succeed in their treatment after the individualized assessment, they end up with no conviction. So it's not like, I wanted this to pass so I can rack up convictions. In fact, a win for me under the law is if they succeed in their treatment and the conviction goes away, it dissolves, it's gone from their record. That's the win-win. I there are individuals that think that treatment should be all voluntary, and the studies don't really support that. They support that you can have successful treatment that's court mandated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, voluntary treatment is optimal,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So it's a wait and see. So far, the results look good. We're seeing many more people engage in treatment given the option of jail or treatment, but we're awaiting the end of the story, the successful completions, because we're so new in it.
I appreciate all the background and the sharing and hearing of the initial positive outcomes that you're seeing. The concern that I had leading into the passage of Prop 36, and others share the concern, was the potential for disproportionate impact upon people of color. And there was a recent article, Voice of San Diego, and I think Cal Matters, maybe, or another group. I'm not sure if I'm getting that right, but came out that I believe the data they shared was that initial data showed a disproportionate number of Black San Diegans being charged with Prop 36 related offenses. I believe it was somewhere along the lines of 36% of the Prop 36 offending individuals identify as Black, compared to the larger population in San Diego is only about 6%. What are your thoughts on that disproportionate representation?
Yeah, I saw that, and that of course is always of concern and something that we want to study. What we do know, And what the articles didn't cover that I
Mm.
would want a fuller answer to is, were those same percentages there before Prop 36 in the theft and drug area? Were there more individuals of color proportionate to their population in the community that were already being charged with the theft and the drug offenses, but at the pre Prop 36 level?
Hmm.
So, what I do know is that we have a disproportionate level to the population of persons from the coroner's data, Black individuals, African Americans who are dying of overdoses. So, if the end of the story is that the statistics that we're seeing as to Prop 36 arrests by in Central Division, San Diego Police was the articles, is the same as previously, and if in fact it is consistent with the number of the disproportionality with overdoses, then the end of the story that I want to make sure I examine as a DA who cares about equality for everybody is, are we actually ending up with addressing those root causes through treatment and getting people out of the system completely? That's again, that takes a year of data. We'd want to be thoughtful and make sure I only provide the community with accurate data. But I don't think we heard the full picture, right, of the disproportionate amount of people who are also dying of overdoses that are of color.
That's an important point, and understanding your focus on the genesis of it as a life-saving measure is really critical to lift up and understand as we explore these really challenging issues.
Right.
The other part of looking at whether the percentage of population engaged in those activities was the same before Prop 36 as after is, of course, the question of um, what about the percentage of people actually engaging in the activities, not just being charged for the activities,
Exactly.
right? And we know that data shows that that's disproportionately impacting people of color and low income communities. And so the
And
fear for that I had leading into it was that by returning to greater levels of criminal enforcement, we would be further further punishing those disproportionately identified groups. This is a challenge that is a part of our existence as a community, right?
well, I mean, Greg, we have to be, for justice to work, it has to be based on equality for
Yeah,
everyone. So
yeah.
I think our justice system is a work in progress.
Mm,
For our office, maybe the listeners don't know, we have what's called race blind charging. So when cases are charged in this Prop 36 category, the race is not identified. And so the name or anything that would indicate the race of the individual is not identified through a law that we follow. It's called race blind charging. So again, we have to look at the issue more deeply and make sure that we're always looking in the mirror at ourselves and working towards a perfect justice system that
mm.
is unbiased and clear. Um, but sometimes just the number itself is not telling the whole story.
Sure,
Yeah,
100%. And these issues are complex and multi-layered. You shared that analysis of homelessness,
right.
right? I would argue that this is many times more complex, because I
Absolutely.
think homelessness is in many ways an outcome of these issues of systemic inequalities
Yeah.
throughout our community and throughout our country as well. I want to thank you for coming on our show and for being so open to addressing these issues and sharing your perspectives. I think our listeners really will appreciate it. I know I very much appreciate it.
Well, thank you. No, it's an honor to work with you, and Just one good story of someone that we've been able to give hope for the future, dignity to is worth all the efforts that we're all putting in.
Yeah. Well, and thank you for offering to return and come back to these issues in the future. I think
Absolutely.
it's an opportunity for us to dive deeper when we have a little bit more time and can prepare more on those specifically, whether it's Prop 36 implementation or other intersections around criminal justice and homelessness. I do want to touch on before we wrap up today one of the other tremendously positive things that your office and you have led, and that is the creation of One Safe Place here in North San Diego County. And last year, One Safe Place, which you can share more about in a moment, celebrated its 2 year anniversary of operating and has helped more than 6,000 individuals, including 2,000 children. So I'd love for our listeners to be able to learn a little bit more about what One Safe Place is and why you have worked to create this important resource.
Well, this was a dream also to have a place where, because the old system was, a crime victim who's lost everything, has been lost their support system, whether domestic violence, human trafficking, or elder abuse, ends up being given like 50 referrals. Go here to get your trauma therapy, go here to get food, here to get retrained for a job, here to get your sexual assault exam, your domestic violence exam. And that was so overwhelming that victims were not able to seek the treatment and services they need. So the Family Justice Center system, which is part of One Safe Place, is creating a one-stop shop for crime victims and their needs.
Hmm.
So when a victim walks in, there's an assessment and they are sent, and on site is 102 partners that include the Child Advocacy Center, forensic interviews for children, trauma interviews, sexual assault exam, along with trauma therapy and emotional supports, connections to jobs, connections navigator who's on site for to prevent homelessness or to stop homelessness if it already began. And it's been incredible. At this point, as we speak, over 8,000 victims have walked through. And what's beautiful is 50% of them come back on an average of 5 times.
Wow.
So it means that they do feel like it's a safe place,
Mm-hmm.
like its name, one
Mm-hmm.
safe place, and that their lives are improving. And that's all part of that swimming upstream, making sure that the kids who are witnessing this violence don't start to believe this is life. This is what love is. That you see your mom beat up, you see your dad pushed around. You begin to interrupt those cycles, generational cycles of violence. So we're very excited about the results so far. And we have seen, believe it or not, a major drop in domestic violence murders, which is the harm we're trying to prevent through early interventions.
Well, truly life saving. Wonderful to hear about that outcome of a reduction in murders. And we at Interfaith Community Services have been a part of being one of those 102
Right.
service partners. And so we've seen the opportunity to connect with families who wouldn't otherwise know about our services, including our family shelter here in Escondido, or just things as simple as food support and help accessing childcare. So it's been a huge gain for all of us here in the community, and like you said, now more than 8,000 people who've walked through those doors.
Right. Yeah, no. And again, I think it's another concept that only works because of the strong partnerships, like working with you and the other providers. This is the only way it works. We're proud to bring it together as the convener, like Shelter Ready, but it really belongs to the community.
Wow. Wow. Well, thank you for creating that. Thank you for taking the time to come on our show today. We're going to wrap up. Before we wrap up, we always have a call to action for our listeners.
Right.
So, would love to hear your call to action to them. And just want to summarize again the work that your office has done, bringing forward the Shelter Ready app, changing the way we get people off the streets into shelters effectively. Thank you for your thoughts and being a part of a reflective conversation around Prop 36. Look forward to future conversations on that topic. And again, thank you for the creation of One Safe Place, helping thousands of people here in our community.
Well, Greg, thank you and everything that you do. It's really an honor to be here and to continue to roll up our sleeves together.
Well, speaking of together, we always have that call to action to our listeners.
Okay.
So they've taken the time to listen to a podcast around homelessness, and now they've learned more about your amazing career, what you've accomplished, who you are, why you do this work. If you have a call to action for our listeners, what is it today?
I really think that an educated community is an empowered community.
Hmm.
So in a busy world, I think take the time to not just read the cover, to really go beyond the cover and understand the issues. Because if your knowledge is power, and your knowledge then helps us to get things done. It helps us talk to our legislators who listen to you to make sure that our laws meet the moment, protect our children, protect our seniors, prevent homelessness, all those things that can only be done with an educated, informed community.
And democracy requires education and
Absolutely.
engagement, right? So we need it. We
Absolutely.
need it more than ever.
That's right.
It's a wonderful call to action. Love that for our listeners. And I would offer to our listeners and viewers, if there are topics that you would like to learn more about, if you think it would be valuable for us as a show to dive more into, let us know. Reach out to us through our website, homelessinsandiego.org, and we'll set up conversations, additional conversations, because couldn't agree with you more. We need to go beyond the cover story, beyond the headlines, and really get to know the complexities of these key issues if we're going to be able to overcome them.
That's right.
Well, DA Summer Stephan, thank you so much for coming on our show. Thank you for everything that you're doing to help others and to support peace and justice and a stronger community here in San Diego.
Thank you. It's an honor.